future tense. So the Gemara uses this pasuk as a proof from Tchias HaMesim min HaTorah. How do we know there's going to be Tchias HaMesim min HaTorah? So the Gemara says, Oz Yashir Moshe. Moshe one day sing. So I once told you the story with the Bava Rebbe. He was in a DP camp. And that first Shabbos in the DP means displaced persons camp. And he was in that camp. And Friday night, he started to sing Zmirot. Right after the war. Right after he was liberated. And nobody sang with him. He was singing by himself. And when he asked people around, why didn't you sing? They said, how can we sing? We don't have a song in our hearts. Millions of Jews just died. And look at us, we have no place to go. How can we sing? We have no mood to sing. So he said, Moshe Rabbeinu had the same problem. When the Jews crossed the Yam Suf, he started to sing a song. The Jew says, how can we sing? We left 12 million dead Jews in Egypt, right? 4/5 died in Egypt. We're just a small amount that came out. Everybody else is gone. We have no song in our hearts. So Moshe said, you're right. Sing today, not for today. Sing for tomorrow. Sing for the future. Keep in mind that one day there'll be Tchias HaMesim. All those that we left behind will be with us around the table. Think about that day. Pretend they're all there with you. And go sing your song. So he said, the Bava Rebbe said to the people there, you're right, we lost the best. We lost the cream of the crop, we lost the best. Imagine they're around the table with you. Would you now sing? He said, sure. So let's go sing. And he says, that's why they taught Tchias HaMesim at this point by Oz Yashir Moshe. Famous word from the Bava Rebbe. It says, Vatikach Miriam Hanaviyah, Miriam the prophetess, who prophesied the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, as Hatof. They talk about this drum. They say, the Medrash says, this was the same drum she played when Amram married Yocheved back again.
Oh, wow.
So she had this drum in her possession for some 80 odd years. Because when Amram took her back, it was 80 years and Moshe was born, and Moshe was 80 now. So she saved this drum for 80 years, these musical instruments. She pulled them out, and she had set them aside in Egypt, saying, one day we're going to play with these instruments, we're going to sing a song with them. I mean, that's why she was called Neviah.
She knows what she's doing.
She
It
knew
was
what
a
she was
kid
doing.
toy, and she kept it,
Yeah.
because she was a kid. What, she was 5 years
She was
old?
5, 6 years old. It was amazing.
Baruch HaKodesh,
And then it says, Vatan lehem Miriam. Miriam said to the women, Shiru la Hashem ki go'o go'o. Sing to Hashem for his greatness and his might. Sus v'rochvo romavayom. He drowned the horse and the rider into the sea. So there's a famous Dvar Torah they say about this, that the women came to Miriam and said, it was an Ars Chus that we got out of Egypt, right? It was Chus Noshim Tzidkonios. Now God is going to take the Jewish people to Har Sinai. He's going to give them the Torah. Who benefits from the Torah? The men. Who's going to learn the Torah? The men. Who's going to get the reward for all the mitzvahs in the Torah? The men. We're left out. Everything was on our foot, and we're second-grade citizens. We're second-class citizens. So Miriam said to the women, let me ask you a question. In the Yam Suf, the horse and rider drowned. I understand why the rider drowned, because he was he was the taskmaster. But the horse is a horse.
Yeah.
Of course. What did the horse do? The horse didn't do anything. Must be that since the horse facilitated, allowed the rider to do his job, when you facilitate something, you're just as guilty.
Also,
That means if a person commits a crime, and you weren't in the bank, you didn't rob the bank, and you didn't kill anyone, you were driving the getaway car. You're just as guilty. You're an accomplice. You're just as guilty. By association, you're guilty for murder also, if murder is committed in the course of a felony. So Miriam says, if the same is true for the negative, the same is true for the positive. If we, by taking care of the children and preparing the house and cooking and baking and shopping, allow our husbands to have the free time to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, we're the horse who allows the rider to accomplish what they're accomplishing. Guess what? We share equally. So this is the song she's saying to them. Don't be, despondent, and don't be upset, and you're not second-class citizens. Keep in mind, sus v'rachvo rama ayam.
We're soldiers of Hashem. So in a military organization, You know, it's not like everybody said, no, you're all in together. This guy messes up, you messed up too, even though you didn't really do anything.
That is correct. And in a military operation, if the supply lines, if the people preparing the food decide we're not preparing food, we're going to polish the bullets or the plane, you know, you're going to fail. You know, everybody has their job.
Right.
And the key is for everybody to do their job.
Well-oiled machine.
You know, so it has to be done that way. So, you know, it is what it is. Then, it's interesting. There's a medrash that says, it talks about the mon. They were hungry, they wanted food. Hashem said, I'm going to give them mon. Hini mamten lechem lechem min hashamayim. And they're going to go out every day and they're going to collect it. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Then it says, in the Pasuk, it says in the Torah this week, and they ate the man for 40 years. You know, which is interesting, because when you read it, you ask yourself, what 40 years?
38.
There was no chet hamaraglim yet. There was no sin of the spies. You know, you would think so. Obviously, it's a question of when things were written in the Torah, and we're going to see that next week with Yisro. When did Yisro actually come? So you know, it talks about that the eighth man. Literally, it says, "Ubnei Yisrael ochlu es hamon arboim shana."
Yeah.
Ad boam el eretz noshav, so they got into Israel. So it's like that pasuk.
Belong after בחטא המרגלים.
It's like it was put in over here. Nobody saw the written Torah, maybe except Moshe. So I mean, Moshe, when he wrote this pasuk, must have scratched his head and said, "What 40 years? I mean, we're going to Har Sinai. We're going to be at Har Sinai for a year or two max. You know."
So that's only if you hold that he wrote it as the time was going.
That's right.
So the answer is he wrote everything at the end of the 40 years.
So then he put that in.
That's why
Okay.
he put it in.
So then the Gemara says, hold on. It wasn't 40 years. It was 40 years less a month.
Right.
Because the man fell after they were out of Egypt.
40 days after.
Right. So there's a medrash that says that the matzah they brought out of Egypt tasted like the man. Which everybody scratches their head and say, well, matzah tastes like matzah. The man tastes like whatever you want it to taste. So they bring down, I saw one of the Perushim say that man is the food of angels. Lechem abirim, the food of angels. You cannot leave Egypt and start eating man. They had to slowly, spiritually go up some levels. It took 30 days of growth, of seeing miracles, of literally being around Moshe and Aaron to get to the level where they could actually consume the man. One of the people who was writing this gave the example of the concentration camps. My uncle was Lieutenant Birnbaum. There's a book called Lieutenant Birnbaum. He's my uncle. He was one of the first Americans in the concentration camps when they were liberated. And he said that these emaciated bodies came running over to the Americans and they wanted food. And the Americans gave him chocolate bars, Hershey's chocolate bars. And that almost killed them.
Why?
Because they couldn't,
Yeah.
they couldn't take it. Their bodies were so badly emaciated, they couldn't eat it, they couldn't digest it. Literally, they had to give them like a real small piece one day and a small portion the next day. They had to reintroduce food because they didn't have food. They were emaciated. So it says that when the Jews left Egypt, they couldn't eat the man. It was too spiritual. It took 30 days for them to do it. And then, at the end of the 40 years, the man fell on Zion Oder, the day Moshe Rabbeinu died. And then it never fell after that. But it lasted for another 30 days until they got into Israel. So it took 30 days to build them up to eat the man, and it took about 30 days to wean them off the man
Gradually.
to regular food.
Oh wow.
So it's fascinating that this man that was lechem abirim was just simply, different.
Like the
different.
first time, imagine 3 million people going to the bathroom for the first time.
Yeah.
Wow. That's true.
Imagine the lines.
No diapers, no.
We laugh about that. I was doing some for Parshas Yisro. It says that Yisro saw Moshe, and Moshe's sitting there, and there's a whole line of people, right? And Yisro says to Moshe, this is crazy. You can't do this. You're going to get exhausted. You're just going to wear yourself out. And he comes up with this whole system. So I saw one of the Meforshim say, hold on here. What's the problem? Moshe, for the last 4 months, 120 days, has been away. He was on the mountain for 40 days, came down, was a chet to ego. Went back up for 40 days the next day, came down, was down for a day, and went back up again. Just think Corona. The courts have been closed for 4 months. So of course there's a backlog of cases, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a backlog forever. So now Moshe comes finally down, brings the Torah, and now there's a whole line of people with questions. Okay, but Moshe should have said to Yisro, I've been away for 4 months. Of course there's a whole line of questions. But in a week or two, the line will be gone,
Exactly.
We'll be all caught up, What do you think? Every day in the desert there was 10,000 people lined up to see Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. Yisro's objection, and yet he comes up with this whole system, and they implement it. So next week we're going to have to understand.
Civil courts.
Right, we're going to have to understand what's happening there and why.
Right.
At any rate, Rabbi Olbaum, it's already 9:30. Rabbi Olbaum brings down a story. It's an old story. I think we talked about it here because I saw it once with Rabbi Zilberstein. He says there was this yeshiva guy in Israel. He was driving his car through one of the shchunot, and a dog ran out of the house and ran right into the street, and smack, the car killed it. Hit the dog and killed it. Of course, the people who owned the dog, they were chilonim, they were not religious, started screaming and yelling at this yeshiva guy, you killed my dog, you killed our dog, what kind of a person are you, what kind of a crazy driver are you? And of course the yeshiva guy said, what do you want from me? I mean, the dog just ran out in front of my car. I mean, I didn't even see it. I couldn't have stopped if I wanted to. But he was a mensch. He said, listen, I'll buy you a new dog. What does the dog cost? 100 shekel, 500 shekel. Find yourself a new dog, I'll buy you a new dog. And they took him up on it. And this yeshiva guy was like a little bit into kiruv, and they start having a relationship back and forth, and start talking to one another. And eventually this family starts becoming a little bit more religious because they saw what a mensch he was. And they said to him, you know what? Our community has no shiurim whatsoever. If you want, we're going to make our basement. They had like a miklat, a basement. We'll make it into a small base medrash. We'll buy some books. And once a week you can come and give a shiur. And he said, great. Comes that first week, and he sees this sign, base medrash, Igor. Igor's base medrash. He says, Igor, who's Igor? So it says, that's the name of the dog. The dog's name was Igor. So we're calling it base medrash Igor in his memory. Why? Because he must have been like a hidden neshama, because his death brought us together, and all these shurim are in his chus. So he said, to name a place, a Jewish institution, like a base medrash after a dog, seems a little...
It's a bit of a mockery.
It seems a little bit of a stretch.
They
So
probably did a bar mitzvah on the dog too.
Right, something like that. I had a friend who called his dog Kalbo Savua. Kalbo Savua was this rich guy that if you were hungry like a dog, he walked out of his home satisfied like he had a whole meal.
Yeah.
But Kalbo means dog, so they call it Kalbo Savua. Kalbo Savua.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Someone called his dog Kolev,
Right.
because Kalev and Kolev is the same letters. So I don't know if that would be appropriate, but that's what they did. Anyway, they asked this Rab Zilberstein, is it appropriate to do that? So Rab Zilberstein goes back and forth. He says there's a Gemara. The Gemara says that a guy sold his cow to a non-Jew, and the cow plowed for 6 days, and on the 7th day, it wouldn't plow. This non-Jew got angry and went back to the guy and said, you sold me a lame cow. He worked for 6 days, now he's not working, defective, I want my money back. He says, no, I'll take care of it. Goes over to the cow, and he whispers in the cow's ear, he says, until now you were working for a Jew, so you couldn't work on Saturday. But I sold it to a non-Jew, you're allowed to work now on Saturday. And from that day forward, the cow plowed on Saturday, worked just fine.
I thought the cat wanted to come back to the Jew.
Yeah, I didn't.
I didn't want to
come
work that
back.
day also.
Never work on Saturday. So this guy was so impressed by this, he converted to Judaism. And they called him Rabbi Yochanan ben Tursa. Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Tursa. Tursa means cow, the son of a cow. That's what they didn't call him Ben Avram
But
Avinu.
there's a word in English, torso, right? I mean,
It could be torso.
well, what is a torso?
Torso is your body.
Body.
Your
Right.
תוספות זה לא צלעות,
But
ribs.
in Aramaic, a tuf is the same as a shin. So it's Yochanan ben Shor, the son of the cow.
Tula.
So your absorption says, so you see, we do name even people after animals if they had a effect on your life. Then he goes back and he says, well, but a cow is a kosher animal, the dog is not a kosher animal. And the Torah says that if you need to bring a korban, and you don't have the money for a korban, but you have a dog.
Right.
If you sell the dog and you use the money to buy an animal, you can't bring it.
Can't
Really?
Only kill it.
No, you can't bring it. Only a
Only
dog.
kill it.
It says, Esnan Zona, the money that a Zona makes, Umechir Kelev, and the money from the sale of a dog,
No.
Lo Sovi Beis Hashem. You can't bring it
Everything
to
we
Beis
can
Hashem.
do. What
Anything.
only kill.
You can sell any other animal. You can sell a snake, you can sell a spider, you can sell a hamster, you can sell fish.
So what's the discrimination against?
Nishama.
Because dogs are
spiritually not as impure and they have
They can't
chutzpah.
I listen to this.
Chutzpah. And at the same time, if you have
Snake is arur, you're allowed to sell a snake and to bring the korban,
And
the
you can
money
buy,
to
you
do.
can
dog,
buy a korban,
like a
but not a
dog.
dog.
She walks
Not
out
a dog, that's what it is.
like a dog.
So Rav Zilberstein says, maybe it's inappropriate to name a place after
Yeah.
a dog. Then he brings down from the Yerushalmi how they honored certain dogs who risked their lives to save their masters. And he says that in Egypt, the dogs got all these rewards for not barking. So he comes out in the end that you're allowed to name the Beis Medrash after the dog. He says you can call it, Beis Kalvo or Beis Ego.
That's
whatever-
right, you're allowed.
Whatever the name of it. That's the conclusion that Rav Zilberstein had. Rav Zilberstein had another question, very interesting question also. I have it over here. Someone was becoming a Baal Tshuva, and the rabbi was working with him, and he finally says, I want to buy a pair of tefillin. So the rabbi says, you know what? I'll get you a pair of tefillin. I'll get you a really nice pair of tefillin, and when you put it on, I'm going to make a whole party for when you put it on. So he orders the tefillin. The tefillin come on Monday. The party is scheduled for Thursday. So he asked Rav Zilberstein, what should I do? I wanted to give him the tefillin at the party and make a whole big thing out of it. But that's Thursday. I have the tefillin now. It's Monday. If I give him the tefillin now, he'll have the mitzvah tefillin for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Or should I rather wait and just give him the mitzvah, wait till Thursday? Is it the mitzvah that's more important, or is the presentation important also?
Yes.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Rav Zilberstein says that if you look in the Torah, Moshe gives the Jewish people all the rules of the man. It's going to fall every day.
Right.
Take only what you need. If you take too much, you're not going to have it anyway. If you take too little, you'll always have the same. If you take a double portion, what will happen?
They're gonna rot
It's going to rot away.
unless Shabbat.
Now, Hashem said to Moshe, but remember, on Friday, a double portion is going to fall.
Yeah.
Okay, Moshe does not tell the Jewish people that. Comes Friday, the Jewish people come running to Moshe, and they say to Moshe, do you know what happened today? 2 portions of man fell. It says, Vayhi bayom hashmini, it was on the 6th day, they went out, and they found 2 portions of man instead of 1. And it came to the Nesiim, and the Nesiim came and told Moshe. So Moshe says, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Tomorrow is Shabbos, the man's not going to fall on Shabbos, so you got an extra portion today. So Rav Zilberstein says, Hashem told this to Moshe a week ago. Why didn't Moshe tell the Jewish people? Why did he wait? So it says, Moshe wanted them to see how every day the man melted, got wormy. Then he would see on the 6th day it didn't happen. The presentation would be more impressive if they could see it with their own eyes. So he waited and did not tell them about it until day 6. So Rav Zilberstein says, it comes from here that presentation is sometimes more important than the
The
mitzvah.
mitzvah itself.
And therefore, hold the tefillin, wait till Thursday, so he'll lose a few days.
It's okay, not wearing tefillin.
Yeah, and make the
Kiddush
fancy
Hashem.
presentation that you want to do. So I found that to be very, very interesting. That's how what he said. It talks about the man. I remember that I years ago, I probably told this to you over the years, you know, I had in my notes over here, that I once had a conversation with a conservative rabbi. And the conservative rabbi said to me, why is it so terrible if my congregation drives on Shabbos? What's so bad? They're driving to shul. They're coming to shul. If I tell them they can't drive to shul, what do you mean? They're not going to drive? They'll drive. They'll go to the movies. They'll go to a baseball game. They're going to go to the park. They're going to go shopping. They're going to drive anyway.
Right.
So they're driving anyway. So what difference does it make if they drive to shul or not? Why is that? Why does the Orthodox people get so crazy that these people drive to shul? So the answer was, I said to him, where do your congregation live? Ah, he says they live all over. They live in Mastic. They live in, all the way out on the island in Valley Stream. They live in Scarsdale. I says, because they can drive on Shabbos, they don't have to live near a shul. So they can live wherever they want. Where do they live? Amongst Goyim. Who do they friendly with? The non-Jewish people.
Sure.
Who are they going to marry? Non-Jewish people. I said, you're going to lose them all. Orthodoxy, when they say you can't drive, it forces you to buy a house near a shul. When you have that many Jewish people living near the shul, all of a sudden you have bakeries, and you have butcher shops, and you have restaurants, and then you have a mikvah, then you have schools, you have a kehila, community. So the restriction of driving forces you
Right.
to have a community that services your needs.
Right.
But if you can drive, you can live anywhere.
Anywhere.
You don't have to live in there.
And it makes you don't care, really.
Yeah, that's right. It makes you no longer
that's
recognizable
why-
as a
And
Jew.
that's why the house will cost $2 million. And that's what we're gonna need about by bricks.
Yeah, for no income check.
Exactly.
Okay, it's already 10 to 10. I just one last thing I'm going to share with you. I saw in the Yotze Pelos HaTorah. It talked about the Sefer HaRefuos. If you remember, the Sefer HaRefuos was a book that inside, whatever the illness was, it had the cure. Now, who wrote the Sefer HaRefuos? So one opinion is that Adam HaRishon wrote it and kept it in Gan Eden. After the flood, the people in Noah's Ark were so sick from being locked up with all these animals for a full year that Shem went to Gan Eden and got the Sefer HaRefuos to cure everybody. And it was handed down from Shem to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, to everybody. And it remained in a force. Shlomo Melech, some people say, wrote it, or he enhanced it. And it stayed until the days of Chizkiyahu HaMelech.
Oh wow.
And he buried it. He got rid of it. He didn't
There was a
want-
book that would heal
that
you.
literally, whatever illness you had, you could look it up, and it gave you the cure.
The refuah,
And therefore, people no longer believe
remedy.
in Hashem, and people no longer daven to Hashem.
Oh yeah.
Someone sent me a joke. He